Hello, my name is Jessica Cardinale, and I am a graduate student in the Clinical Psychology PhD program at Alliant International University. Welcome to this module intended to teach you about the STOP skill from DBT. This skill is described by the Distress Tolerance Handout 4 and accompanied by Distress Tolerance Worksheets 2 and 2A. DBT refers to dialectical behavior therapy, which is a broad-based cognitive behavioral treatment originally developed for chronically suicidal individuals diagnosed with specific mental health disorders, particularly borderline personality disorder. A DBT-oriented treatment regimen includes learning a variety of practical skills intended to help individuals manage difficult and overwhelming emotions. One such skill is the STOP skill, which is the focus of this module. DBT is broken down into 4 modules: mindfulness, interpersonal effectiveness, emotion regulation, and distress tolerance. The STOP skill is learned as part of the distress tolerance module, which focuses on learning to tolerate and survive crises without making them worse. The distress tolerance module is further broken down into 2 key sets of skills. The crisis survival skills are intended to help you learn to tolerate painful events, urges, and emotions when making things better in the moment is not necessarily an option. The reality acceptance skills show you how to reduce suffering by helping you to accept and enter fully into life, even if it is not the life you wanted or anticipated. There are also a set of specialized skills for when it feels like a state of crisis is an addiction. The STOP skill is considered a crisis survival skill. The STOP skill helps individuals refrain from acting impulsively on their emotions and making difficult situations worse. This is achieved by helping an individual resist acting on their first impulse by stopping, taking a step back to detach from the situation, observing by gathering information about what is going on, and then proceeding mindfully by evaluating the most effective option to take, given the goals, and finally following that option. First, we must understand when it is appropriate to use the STOP skill. The STOP skill is useful in situations where your emotion mind takes over, leading you to act impulsively without thinking about the consequences of what might happen. When you react impulsively, you don't have time to use your skills and engage with your wise mind. The STOP skill is intended to interrupt this automatic, impulsive reaction so that you can stop yourself from reacting and help you stay in control. Now, we can talk more specifically about each of the 4 steps involved in the STOP skill. The S in STOP refers to stopping. When you feel your emotions are going to take control, you just stop. Don't show any reaction to the situation. Just freeze for a moment. This will help prevent you from acting on your emotions and instead help you stay in control. You can be in charge of your emotions if at first you just stop. For example, imagine someone says something to you that provokes your anger. Maybe they called you a name or cursed at you. You might have the urge to attack that person, either physically or verbally, but it probably isn't in your best interest to do so. Doing that might result in you getting hurt, going to jail, facing other criminal charges, or receiving a fine. Instead, you can stop, freeze, and refrain from acting on your impulse to attack. In another example, imagine you just went through a breakup and you run into your ex, who you still love. Your first impulse might be to run up to them and give them a hug, but that might not be thinking with wise mind. Given the situation, they will probably reject you, which will lead to you feeling hurt. So instead, you can stop and avoid acting on the urge to hug them. The T in STOP refers to taking a step back. When something hurtful or stressful happens, it can be difficult to think about the best way to react to the situation on the spot. Instead, you can give yourself a moment to calm down and think about the best way to handle it. You can take a step back, either mentally or physically, whenever possible, to get unstuck from what is going on around you. Take a deep breath and continue breathing deeply until you feel back in control of your emotions. You don't have to let your emotions control what you do because you are not your emotions. You don't have to let them put you over the edge and react without thinking. For example, imagine you are crossing the street and don't see the car that is coming up on the side of you. The driver stops the car, gets out, starts cursing at you, and then physically pushes you. Your urge is probably to punch him in the face and start a fight. However, you know this would escalate the situation and cause more trouble for you. Instead, you first stop, and then you literally take a step back to remove yourself from the conversation and avoid escalating things further. Related to this step in the STOP skill is the timeout skill, which is a series of steps intended to help you physically pause what you are doing for a designated amount of time so that you can cultivate mindfulness, regulate your emotions, and prepare to engage effectively with another person. There are 3 simple steps to helping you effectively use the timeout skill. First, you recognize that the situation may be escalating, and you mindfully tune into your emotions in the current moment to notice if you may be having the urge to react in such a way that things may get worse. Propose to the other person that you need to quickly step away for a moment to take a time out from the interaction to reduce the intensity to a more workable level. Next, you step away from the situation by separating yourself physically for a designated amount of time. You can use this time to de-escalate, calm, and regulate your emotions, cultivate mindfulness, take responsibility as needed, and prepare to re-engage with the other person. After the designated amount of time has passed, return to the interaction. If the other person needs more time, negotiate this with them or reschedule a better time to return to the interaction. If you have both determined it is an appropriate time to continue the interaction, then you can work together to actively listen to each other and respond in validating ways. This is a great strategy to help stop impulsive, angry behavior that can make an interaction worse and cause harm in relationships with those you love. It's also important to remember taking a timeout does not mean you are avoiding the interaction. Instead, it means that you are mindfully pausing the interaction to return to it at a later time when you can respond with a clear, intentional mindset. The O in STOP refers to observing the situation. Pay attention to what is happening around you, within you, who is involved, and what other people are doing and saying. You want to remind yourself that in order to make the best choice, you'll have to carefully observe the situation and not jump to conclusions. You can do this by gathering the relevant facts to understand what is happening and what options you have for responding. The P in STOP refers to proceeding mindfully. Start to ask yourself what it is that you want to achieve from the situation. What is your goal? What choice makes the situation better? What makes it worse? Check in with your wise mind about the best way to handle the problem. Remember, being mindful is the opposite of impulsivity and reactivity. Being calm, in control, and informed will help you effectively evaluate what is happening and help you to make the best decision to handle it effectively. For example, let's say you get home really late from work because you had a flat tire on your way home. When you walk through the door, your partner immediately starts yelling at you and accusing you of cheating while calling you names. This starts to make you feel incredibly angry, and you want to yell and call him names too. Except, given all you've learned, you actually want to respond skillfully in a way that won't make the situation worse. So instead, you stop, take a step back from your partner who's still yelling at you. You notice that your partner seems drunk, and turn towards the kitchen where you can see a lot of empty beer bottles. Remember that when your partner is drinking, it makes no sense to argue with them, and they'll probably try to apologize in the morning. With this information, you decide it's best to let your partner know you had a flat tire, appease their concerns, and go to your room to get some sleep. You know that it would be best to postpone the conversation until the next day, when you both had some time away from the situation. Here's another example. Let's say you're on a really bad date and it's made you feel lonely, and you start thinking about your ex that just broke up with you 3 months ago. You have the impulse to text them, but you know if you do, he could ignore you or say something that makes you feel even worse. Before you text him, you stop, take a moment to pause and breathe, and then consider all the facts of your current situation. You observe yourself feeling sad. You reflect on the last few interactions you've had with your ex, and you have memory thoughts about how you felt during those interactions. You decide to proceed mindfully and decide the best thing you can do is to reach out to another friend or loved one who can give you a similar sense of connection and care. You explain to your date that you'd like to go home now, and you invite your friend over to keep you company for a few hours. As we've seen, the DBT STOP skill is great to use in the heat of the moment to help stop yourself from doing something that will only cause more pain and suffering. What ways do you think you can use your STOP skill? These two DBT worksheets on the screen are an excellent way to start practicing.